The salute came at exactly 11 seconds. But nobody understood why until they saw what Bruce Lee had done in the silence. Golden Harvest Studios, Kowloon, Hong Kong. March 1973. Backstage corridor between soundstages 4 and 5. Concrete walls. Hanging cables. The smell of paint and sawdust. 4 people present. No cameras. No recording. Just witnesses to something that would be whispered about for decades. Bruce Lee was walking from makeup to the set of Enter the Dragon. Black training pants. Barefoot. Towel around his shoulders. He just finished a conversation with the stunt coordinator about the mirror room sequence they'd be filming that afternoon. The corridor was narrow. Industrial. Fluorescent lights overhead creating harsh shadows. Equipment cases stacked along one wall. A rolling cart with props. The kind of backstage space that exists in every film studio, functional, unglamorous, forgotten the moment you walk through it. Except this corridor would be remembered. A man stepped out from the shadows near the equipment cases. Older. Maybe 65. Ramrod posture. Dress military uniform. Royal Hong Kong Defense Force. Retired rank insignia visible on his shoulders. White gloves. Military cap. Medals across his chest, enough medals to suggest a career of significant service. Brigadier General Liang Chen-wei. Retired 3 years earlier after 42 years of military service. Decorated veteran. Respected commander. A man who had spent his entire adult life in structures of hierarchy, discipline, and absolute authority. He stepped directly into Bruce Lee's path. Bruce stopped. 3 feet of distance between them. The corridor was too narrow to simply walk around. Bruce's face remained neutral, calm, present, that quality of absolute stillness he was famous for. "You're Bruce Lee," the general said. Not a question. A statement. His voice carried that particular quality of military command. Clipped, precise, expecting acknowledgement. "I am," Bruce replied quietly. "The movie star." Bruce didn't respond. Just waited. The general's jaw tightened slightly. "I've heard stories. About what you claim to do. About your techniques." Behind them, in the shadows near Soundstage 5, 3 crew members had frozen. A lighting technician. A set dresser. An assistant director. They recognized the uniform. They recognized the tone. They understood immediately that something was unfolding. Bruce didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "I don't claim anything," Bruce said, his tone unchanged, polite, direct, empty of challenge. "I teach. I train. I learn. You teach soldiers how to fight," the general said. "American soldiers. I've read the reports. You were at Fort Ord teaching hand-to-hand combat to military personnel." This was true. In 1967, Bruce had been invited to demonstrate his techniques at military installations. He taught servicemen heading to Vietnam. Modified training methods. Practical application. The military had been interested in Jeet Kune Do's directness, its elimination of classical forms in favor of what worked. "I was asked to share what I know," Bruce said. "I shared it. A civilian," the general continued, and now there was an edge in his voice. "Teaching soldiers. Teaching men who have dedicated their lives to service and discipline. Teaching them that their training is, what did you call it? Classical mess?" The quote was from an interview Bruce had given. About traditional martial arts versus practical application. About stripping away the ceremonial and keeping only what functions under pressure. The quote had been taken out of context, weaponized, repeated by people who wanted to position Bruce as disrespectful to tradition. "I said that some classical training can limit a fighter," Bruce clarified, still calm, still. "I never said soldiers were poorly trained. I said they could be more efficient. More efficient than 40 years of military discipline? Different," Bruce said. "Not better. Different." The general's hands were clasped behind his back. military rest position. But his shoulders had tensed. The four witnesses could see it. The general was working up to something. A challenge. A confrontation. The kind of moment where authority feels threatened and needs to reassert itself. I think, the general said slowly, that movie fighting is not real fighting. I think you've convinced many people of your skill through cinema magic and carefully choreographed sequences. But I've trained men for combat. Real combat. Life and death. Bruce remained silent, listening. And I think, the general continued, his voice harder now, that if we remove the cameras and the wires and the editing, you would find that real discipline defeats showmanship every time. The corridor went very quiet. The three crew members in the shadows didn't move. The lighting technician would later say he stopped breathing. Bruce Lee looked at the general for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. Not mockery. Not anger. Just a small, genuine smile of understanding. General, Bruce said quietly, I respect your service. And I respect your concern. Your right to question. You should question. But I think you're asking the wrong question. What question should I be asking? Not whether movie fighting is real fighting, Bruce said, but whether you're willing to find out what real efficiency looks like. The general's eyes narrowed. Is that a challenge? It's an offer, Bruce replied. 11 seconds. No strikes. No submissions. Just contact. You touch me with your hand, clean contact, controlled, and I'll apologize publicly for every statement I've ever made about traditional training. I'll say you were right. I'll say cinema is illusion. And if you touch me, then you'll understand why the military asked me to teach. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most important part of this story is still unfolding. The general studied Bruce for a long moment. This was not how confrontations were supposed to work. There was no shouting. No posturing. Just a quiet offer, delivered with absolute calm. 11 seconds. The general repeated. 11 seconds. Bruce confirmed. No strikes. Just see if you can make contact. Use whatever training you have. The general nodded slowly. He removed his cap, handed it to the lighting technician who had emerged from the shadows. He removed his white gloves, placed them carefully on an equipment case. His movements were precise, ceremonial, the ritual of a man preparing for something significant. He faced Bruce again. 3 feet of distance. The corridor felt smaller now, the air heavier. When I'm ready? The general asked. Whenever you're ready, Bruce said, and his stance didn't change at all, still neutral, still relaxed, hands loose at his sides. The assistant director would later say he counted the seconds. Silently. In his head. Watching 2 men stand perfectly still in a backstage corridor, while the rest of the film studio continued its normal chaos beyond the walls. Second 1. The general moved. Not a wild rush. A measured step forward. His hands came up. Classic military combative's position, taught at every training installation. Practical. Direct. 40 years of muscle memory engaging. Bruce shifted. Not back. Laterally. 6 inches to the left. His upper body rotated slightly. The general's lead hand passed through empty space where Bruce's shoulder had been a fraction of a second earlier. Second 2. The general adjusted immediately. No hesitation. Another step. His training was evident. Footwork solid, balance maintained, hands positioned to control space. He reached for Bruce's arm. Bruce's arm wasn't there. It had moved. Minimal displacement. 2 inches. The general's fingers closed on air. Second 3. The general changed strategy. He stepped in closer, reducing the space, trying to limit Bruce's mobility. Smart tactics. Exactly what combat training teaches. Close the distance, control the center line, eliminate escape routes. Bruce did something the witnesses couldn't quite process at first. He didn't retreat. He moved forward, into the general's space, not away from it. But somehow he remained untouched. His body seemed to flow around the general's attempts at contact like water moving around a stone. Second 4. The general's breathing had changed. Faster now. Not panic, he was too disciplined for that, but recognition. Recognition that what he was attempting wasn't working. His hands moved faster, trying to trap, to corner, to make contact with this target that kept being exactly where his hands weren't. Second 5. Bruce's face remained calm. Not smug. Not mocking. Just present. His eyes tracked the general's movements with that particular quality of awareness he'd developed through years of training, seeing without thinking, responding without deciding. Second 6. The general threw a feint. Good technique. Draw the reaction, then capitalize on the opening. But Bruce didn't react to the feint. He simply wasn't where the feint was directed. The general's actual attack, a grab for Bruce's wrist, met empty space. Second 7. The lighting technician would later describe this second as the turning point. The moment when the general's expression changed from determined to something else. Not frustration. Understanding. The understanding that he was engaged with something his 40 years of training hadn't prepared him for. Second 8. Bruce moved closer. Now they were less than a foot apart. The general tried to use the proximity, grabbed for Bruce's shoulder, his torso, tried to use superior size and strength to his advantage. Bruce's shoulder rolled. His torso shifted. His hips adjusted. Each movement minimal. Economical. Necessary and nothing more. The general's hands kept closing on fabric that had just moved, on limbs that had just redistributed their position. Second 9. The general was breathing hard now. Sweat on his forehead despite the cool corridor. His hands had never stopped moving. Trying. Reaching. Attempting to make contact. And failing. Not because Bruce was faster, though he was. Not because Bruce was stronger, though he might have been. Because Bruce existed in spaces between intention and action. In the gap between thought and movement. Second 10. The general's arms dropped slightly. Not in surrender. In recognition. In the moment when a lifetime of certainty encounters something it cannot categorize. Second 11. Bruce Lee moved his hand. Not fast. Not aggressively. Slowly, deliberately, clearly. He extended 2 fingers and placed them gently against the center of the general's chest. Over his heart. Over his metals. No pressure. No impact. Just contact. The corridor was absolutely silent. The general looked down at Bruce's fingers resting against his uniform. Then up at Bruce's face. Bruce withdrew his hand, lowered it to his side, and waited. Away from the cameras, the general made a choice no one expected. The general stood perfectly still for a moment, that seemed to stretch far longer than 1 second. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. His face worked through emotions the witnesses couldn't fully read, surprise, respect, something that looked like relief. Then Brigadier General Liang Chen-wei, retired, decorated veteran of 42 years of military service, snapped to attention. And raised his right hand in a formal military salute. Directed at Bruce Lee. The 3 crew members in the shadows inhaled sharply. This wasn't done. Generals didn't salute civilians. Decorated officers didn't render honors to movie actors in backstage corridors. But this wasn't about rank. This was about recognition. Bruce Lee returned the salute. Not military. He'd never served. But his own version. A slight bow. Hands pressed together. The traditional martial arts acknowledgement of a teacher to a worthy opponent. They held the gesture for 3 seconds. Then lowered their hands simultaneously. "You touched me," the general said quietly, his voice no longer carrying command, just simple statement. "In 11 seconds. Without force. Without aggression. I couldn't prevent it." "You're a soldier," Bruce said gently. "Trained for war." I'm training for efficiency. Different purposes. Equal discipline. The general nodded slowly. I came here believing you disrespected tradition. I was wrong. You've perfected it. He retrieved his cap and gloves. Before putting them on, he extended his hand. Bruce shook it. Thank you, the general said. For the lesson I didn't know I needed. Bruce smiled. Thank you for having the courage to find out. The general walked away down the corridor, his posture somehow different. Still military, still proud, but carrying something new. Understanding. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. The four witnesses never spoke publicly about what they saw. But the story spread anyway. Whispered in Hong Kong studios. Repeated in training halls. Always the same details. 11 seconds, a backstage corridor, a general's salute. Bruce Lee died 5 months later. The general attended his funeral in civilian clothes. In his pocket, he carried a business card Bruce had given him that day in the corridor. On it, handwritten, "Absorb what is useful." The general kept that card until his own death in 1988. His family found it in his dress uniform pocket. Some lessons last longer than the teachers who give them.